I should have seen it coming. Looking back now, with all the clarity that distance and pain provide, I realize the signs were everywhere. In the way Marcus stopped meeting my eyes during film sessions, in how the rookie, Devin, started taking my usual spot in the layup line during warm-ups, in the subtle shift of Coach's tone when he addressed me, less command, more courtesy, like he was talking to someone fragile. But that night, at Rossi's Italian Kitchen on 5th Street, I was still living in denial, still believing that 10 years of loyalty, of bleeding for this franchise, of carrying teams on my back through playoffs and heartbreaks, meant something more than statistics on a declining graph. The restaurant was one of those old-school places the team always went to after home wins. Dark wood paneling, red leather booths, the smell of garlic and wine thick enough to taste. We had a private room in the back, away from fans and cameras, where we could just be ourselves. Or at least, that's what I thought. I arrived late, traffic was hell, and my knee was acting up again, that familiar grinding sensation that had become my constant companion over the past 2 seasons. I'd spent an extra 20 minutes in the training room after practice, ice wrapped around the joint, staring at the ceiling tiles and pretending I didn't hear the rookies' laughter echoing from the bar. Showers, 23 years old, 6'7", handles like silk and a vertical that defied physics. Devin Marshall was everything I used to be, except faster, hungrier, and unburdened by the weight of expectation. He didn't have the scar tissue yet, didn't wake up at 3 in the morning with his body screaming, didn't know what it felt like to have the entire city on your shoulders. When I walked into that private room, the energy shifted. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they stuttered. Marcus looked up from his phone. Big Mike, our center, gave me a nod that felt more like pity than respect. Devin was at the far end of the table, laughing at something Tony, our shooting guard, had said. He glanced at me, and for just a second something flickered in his eyes. Not hostility, worse, confidence. I took my usual seat, middle of the table where the veterans sat, where I'd sat for 8 years. But tonight, there was a jacket already draped over the chair back. Devin's jacket, one of those overpriced designer pieces that screamed new money and brand deals. "My bad, OG," Devin said, not sounding sorry at all. "Didn't know you were coming, I can move." OG, old guy. When did that become my nickname? "It's cool," I said, sliding into the seat next to it instead. The seat where the younger guys usually sat. The seat where I used to watch veterans slowly fade into irrelevance while I waited my turn at greatness. Marcus sat across from me. We'd been teammates for 6 years, came into the league the same year, suffered through the rebuilding seasons together, finally broke through to the conference finals 3 years ago. He was my brother. At least I thought he was. He was scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging me. That should have been the first real warning. The waitress came around, took our orders. I got the usual, grilled chicken, no pasta, steamed vegetables. The meal of someone desperately trying to keep his body in professional shape while it rebelled against him. Devin ordered a porterhouse steak, loaded baked potato, and a craft beer. The meal of someone who could still eat whatever he wanted and wake up at 6% body fat. The conversation flowed around me. Highlights from practice, someone's new sneaker deal, plans for the upcoming road trip to Portland. I contributed when I could, but I felt like a ghost at my own funeral, watching people move on while I was still in the room. Then Marcus leaned back in his chair, that beer making him loose and careless, and said the words that would split my world in half. "Yo, Devin," he gestured with his bottle toward the rookie. "Tell them about that move you put on our boy during ones today." Devin grinned, but there was something careful in it. "Man, it wasn't nothing." "Nah, don't be humble now." Marcus was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Crossed him so bad I thought we were going to have to call an ambulance." A few guys laughed. Nervous laughter, the kind that happens when someone crosses a line but nobody wants to acknowledge it yet. I kept my face neutral. "It was a good move," I admitted, because it was. The kid had handles. "Good move?" Marcus shook his head, taking another pull from his beer. "Bro, you damn near sent him to the Shadow Realm." More laughter. Louder this time. Permission granted. I felt my jaw tighten, but I stayed quiet. This was how it started, how the disrespect crept in, First, they tested the waters with jokes, then the jokes became observations. Then the observations became truth. I mean, no disrespect, Tony chimed in, always the peacekeeper. But Devin's been cooking in practice. Coach has been running more sets through him lately. That's just smart coaching, someone else added. Gotta develop the young talent. The words hung in the air like smoke. Gotta develop the young talent. As if I was no longer the talent. As if I'd become the obstacle to development rather than the foundation it was built on. I looked at Devin. He was staring at his plate now, not meeting anyone's eyes. Part of me wanted to believe he felt uncomfortable, that he didn't want this. But another part, the part that had survived a decade in this league, knew better. Ambition doesn't feel guilty. It just takes what it can. It's a long season, I said finally, my voice even. Everyone's gonna have their moments. Marcus laughed. Not a friendly laugh. A dismissive one. Come on, man. Don't do that. Do what? That humble veteran thing. We all know what's happening. He leaned forward, and I could see it in his eyes now. Something I'd never seen before. Resentment. Maybe it had always been there, hidden beneath the brotherhood and the shared struggle. Maybe I'd just been too blind to see it. What's happening, Marcus? He held my gaze for a long moment. The table had gone quiet. Even the clinking of silverware had stopped. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how far this would go. You're done, he said simply. The rookie already took your spot. The words landed like a punch to the solar plexus. Not because they were shocking. I'd felt the shift, seen the writing on the wall, but because he said them out loud, in front of everyone. Turned the quiet fear that kept me up at night into a public declaration. I stayed silent. What was there to say? That he was wrong? The numbers didn't lie. My minutes were down. My scoring average had dropped 3 points from last season. The defensive assignments I used to handle were being given to younger legs. I was being slowly phased out, like a song that had been played too many times, like a style that was no longer in fashion. But silence, in moments like these, is its own kind of power. It forces people to sit with what they've said, to hear their own cruelty echo back at them. Marcus shifted in his seat. I'm just being real with you, he added, trying to soften it now that the words had landed. Someone needs to tell you the truth. The truth, I repeated quietly. Yeah. You're not the same player you were 3 years ago. Hell, not even the same player you were last year. Your knee is shot. You're slow on rotations. And Devin, he gestured toward the rookie again. Devin is special, man. He's the future. I looked around the table, waiting for someone to push back. To remind Marcus that I'd carried this team through injuries and losses and media firestorms, that I'd taken pay cuts to keep the core together, that I'd mentored every young player who came through, including Devin. But nobody said anything. Big Mike studied his wine glass. Tony suddenly became very interested in his phone. The others just looked away, like they were witnessing a car crash they couldn't stop. Only Devin met my eyes, and what I saw there surprised me. It wasn't triumph or satisfaction. It was something closer to recognition. Like he understood that one day, probably sooner than he could imagine, he'd be sitting in my seat, watching some new phenom take everything he'd built. Well, I said, pushing back from the table. My knee protested as I stood, another reminder of Marcus's point. I appreciate your honesty. Where are you going? Marcus asked. We haven't even got our food yet. Lost my appetite. I walked out of that private room with whatever dignity I had left, through the main dining area, past tables of families and couples who had no idea who I was or what had just happened. Outside, the night air was cool against my face, and for a moment, I just stood there on the sidewalk, trying to remember how to breathe. My phone buzzed. A text from Big Mike. Don't let him get to you, man. He's drunk and stupid. Then one from Tony. That was out of line. Marcus is tripping. And finally, one from an unknown number that turned out to be Devin. I didn't want it to go down like that. For what it's worth, I still look up to you. I didn't respond to any of them. What was the point? The truth had been spoken. The reality had been named. I was being replaced, and everyone knew it. I got in my car, a Range Rover I'd bought 3 years ago when I signed my last big contract, back when I still felt invincible, and just sat there in the parking lot. The restaurant's neon sign reflected off my windshield, red and flickering, and I thought about calling someone. My agent, maybe, or my mom. Someone who could tell me I was overreacting, that this was just a bad moment in a long season. But I didn't call anyone, because deep down, beneath the anger and the humiliation, I knew Marcus was right. I wasn't the same player anymore. The game I'd dedicated my entire life to was passing me by, and I had no idea who I was without it. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from Twitter. Someone had already leaked what happened at dinner. The post had 3,000 likes and counting. Sources say veteran starter was told by teammate he's been replaced by rookie. Looks like the changing of the guard is official. End of an era? End of an era. I started the engine and drove home through streets that suddenly felt unfamiliar, like I was a tourist in my own life. The city I'd played for, bled for, loved for, it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like something that had already moved on, that was already writing the next chapter without me. When I got home, my penthouse apartment was dark and empty. Minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, all the trappings of success, but none of the warmth of a life actually lived. I'd spent so much time being a basketball player that I'd forgotten to be a person. I walked out onto the balcony and looked down at the city lights stretching out below me. Somewhere down there were people living real lives, falling in love, raising families, building things that mattered beyond a win-loss record. And I was up here, alone, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from my mom. Saw something online. You okay, baby? I stared at the message for a long time before finally typing back, I don't know, Ma. I really don't know. Then I turned off my phone, went inside, and sat in the darkness of my too-big apartment, listening to the silence and wondering when, exactly, everything had started to slip away. The dinner had ended, but the real reckoning was just beginning, and I had no idea if I was strong enough to face it. I woke up to 47 missed calls and 132 text messages. The morning light cut through my bedroom windows like an accusation, and for a few merciful seconds, I didn't remember. Then it all came flooding back. Marcus's words, the silence around that table, the walk of shame out of Rossi's, the social media wildfire that had started before I'd even made it home. My phone was still buzzing on the nightstand, vibrating against the wood in an angry rhythm that matched the pounding in my head. I hadn't drunk anything last night, but my body felt hungover anyway. Stress and shame have their own intoxication. The first call was from my agent, Richard Pearson. 3 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and a text that read, "Call me ASAP. We need damage control." Damage control, as if my career was a PR crisis to be managed rather than a life to be lived. I scrolled through the notifications. ESPN had picked up the story. So had Bleacher Report, The Athletic, and about a dozen basketball podcasts. The headlines varied, but the narrative was the same. Veteran star confronted by teammate, your time is up. Rookie sensation officially takes starting role as former all-star pushed out. Sources, locker room tension erupts as team moves on from aging core. Aging. That word kept appearing, like a diagnosis I couldn't escape. 32 years old and I was aging. In the real world, I'd barely be hitting my stride. In the NBA, I was approaching my expiration date. I forced myself out of bed, my knee immediately reminding me why I wasn't the same player anymore. The grinding sensation, the stiffness, the way it took 3 steps before I could fully extend my leg, these were the small indignities that added up to irrelevance. In the kitchen, I made coffee I didn't want and stared at my phone, knowing I had to call Richard, but not ready to hear what he was going to say. Through the windows, the city was waking up, people heading to work, living lives that didn't rise and fall with basketball statistics and public perception. The phone rang again. Richard. I couldn't avoid it any longer. Tell me you didn't see any of it, he said the moment I answered. No greeting, no how are you, just straight into crisis mode. I saw enough. Okay, we can work with this. I could hear him pacing, the click of expensive shoes on hardwood floors. Richard worked out of a converted loft in the financial district, all glass and steel and contracts worth millions. First thing, no comments to the media. Not a word. We control the narrative, not them. There's nothing to control, Rich. What happened, happened. What happened is Marcus shot his mouth off after too many beers, and now the internet is having a field day, but that doesn't mean we let them write your story. He paused. Have you talked to Coach yet? No. Good. Don't. Not until we have a plan. I'm setting up a meeting for this afternoon. You, me, Coach, and the GM. We're going to get ahead of this. Get ahead of what? The truth? Richard's silence told me everything. He was good at a lot of things. Negotiating contracts, managing endorsements, spinning negative press, but he'd never been good at telling me hard truths when I needed to hear them. Look, he said finally, I'm not going to lie to you. The optics aren't great. Your numbers are down, Devin's numbers are up, and now there's this public situation. But you're still valuable to this franchise. We just need to reframe things. Reframe. I laughed, bitter. You mean accept a bench role? I mean adapt to the reality of where you are in your career. You've had an incredible run. 10 years, 3 All-Star appearances, an Olympic gold medal. That's a legacy most guys would kill for, but the game doesn't stop for anyone. You know that. I did know that. I'd watched it happen to the veterans who came before me, saw how they went from franchise players to role players to retired in what felt like a single season. I just never thought it would happen to me. Nobody ever does. What does the front office want? I asked. We'll discuss that this afternoon. 2 o'clock at the facility. Can you be there? Do I have a choice? There's always a choice, Richard said, but we both knew that was a lie. Get some rest. Stay off social media. And whatever you do, don't respond to Marcus or anyone else from the team until we talk. He hung up, leaving me alone with my coffee and my thoughts. I tried to follow his advice about social media, but curiosity is a cruel master. I opened Twitter, scrolled through my mentions, immediately regretted it. Good. Dude's been washed for 2 seasons anyway. Feel bad for him, but that's the business. Devin is him. End of an era. Thanks for the memories, but it's time to move on. This is sad to watch. He should have retired last year when he still had dignity. Mixed in with the cruelty were defenders, fans who remembered my better years, who posted highlight reels and stats from my prime. But even their support felt like eulogies, remembrances of something dead rather than celebrations of something alive. I was about to put the phone down when I saw a text from someone I hadn't heard from in 8 months. My ex-girlfriend, Jasmine, saw what happened. I know we haven't talked, but if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. Jasmine, beautiful, ambitious, smart. We'd dated for 3 years, lived together for 1. She'd wanted marriage and kids. I'd wanted 1 more championship. When I chose basketball over building a life with her, she'd left, and I'd convinced myself it was the right decision, that there would be time for relationships after I'd cemented my legacy. Now my legacy was being cemented for me, in real time, by sports media and angry teammates. And the woman I'd let slip away was offering comfort I probably didn't deserve. I started to type a response, then deleted it. Started again. Deleted again. What was there to say? That she'd been right? That I'd traded everything real for something temporary? That I was finally ready for the life she'd wanted, now that the life I'd chosen was falling apart? I put the phone down without responding. The apartment felt suffocating. I needed to move, to do something. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I went to the gym, not the team facility. I couldn't face that yet. Couldn't walk into a building where everyone knew what had happened and was either pitying me or relieved they weren't me. Instead, I drove to an old rec center on the east side, the place where I'd first fallen in love with basketball when I was 12 years old. The building hadn't changed much. Same cracked parking lot, same faded paint, same chain-link fence with holes that neighborhood kids squeezed through. Inside, it smelled like rubber and sweat and memory. There was a run happening on the main court. Local guys, some high school kids, a mix of skill levels and ages. They recognized me when I walked in, but nobody made a big deal about it. This was a place where basketball was played for love of the game, not cameras and contracts. You running? An older guy named Jerome asked. I'd known him since I was a kid. He'd been one of the mentors who'd pushed me to take the game seriously. If there's room, there's always room for you here, young man. Young man. When was the last time someone had called me that? I played for 2 hours. No plays, no coaching, no pressure, just basketball in its purest form. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with it. Not for the fame or the money or the validation. For the feeling of moving in rhythm with 4 other people, of reading angles and making passes, of the ball leaving your hands and knowing, before it even reaches the rim, that it's going in. My knee hurt like hell, and I couldn't keep up with the younger guys on fast breaks, but I could still play, could still see the game, still make the right reads, still hit the shots that mattered. Maybe I wasn't the player I used to be, but I was still a player. After the run, I sat on the bleachers, drenched in sweat, and Jerome sat down next to me. "Rough couple of days," he said. "You heard. Everybody heard. Internet ain't got no mercy." He looked out at the court, where another game was starting up. "Can I tell you something?" "Go ahead." "When you were 15, you came in here one day after losing some tournament. You were so mad, throwing the ball at the wall, cussing, saying you were gonna quit. You remember what I told you?" "I did, but I let him say it. I told you that basketball don't care about your feelings. It's gonna break your heart over and over, and you only got 2 choices, quit or learn to love it anyway. Not for what it gives you, but for what it is." I remember. "So what I'm asking you now is, do you still love it? Not the fame, not the contracts, not what other people think, the game itself. Because if you do, then what some teammate said at dinner don't mean a damn thing. And if you don't, well," he stood up, knees creaking, "then maybe it's time to find something else to love." He walked away, leaving me with the question that had been haunting me since I walked out of Rossi's last night. What do I actually love about this? What am I fighting for? I checked my phone. It was 1:15, 45 minutes until the meeting that would probably determine the rest of my career. I drove to the facility in silence, no music, just the sound of traffic and my own thoughts. The parking lot was mostly empty. The team didn't have practice today, which meant this meeting was specifically about me, about my future, about managing the situation. I parked in my usual spot, which suddenly felt presumptuous. How much longer would this spot be mine? Richard was waiting in the lobby wearing one of his designer suits and carrying a leather portfolio that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked worried, which worried me. "Ready?" he asked. "Does it matter?" "Honestly, no, but I'm still asking." We walked through familiar hallways that suddenly felt foreign, past trophy cases displaying championships I'd helped win, past photos of great moments in franchise history, including several that featured my face, past the practice court where I'd spent thousands of hours perfecting my craft. All of it felt like a museum now. History, not present tense. Coach Mitchell's office was at the end of the hall. Through the glass wall, I could see him sitting at his desk with Martin Green, the general manager. Both men looked up when we approached, their expressions carefully neutral, professional. That's what this was going to be. Professional and cold and transactional, because that's what I'd become. A transaction to be managed. Richard knocked, and Coach waved us in. "Gentlemen," he said, gesturing to the chairs across from his desk, "thanks for coming." As if I'd had a choice. Martin Green, 50-something, with graying temples and a handshake that felt like a corporate farewell, got straight to the point. "We want to start by saying we appreciate everything you've done for this franchise," he began, and my stomach dropped. Nothing good ever followed that sentence. "You've been the heart of this team for nearly a decade, and your contributions can't be measured just in statistics. But they were going to measure them anyway. I could see it in the folder open on the desk between us. Numbers, charts, projections, the cold arithmetic of my decline. Coach Mitchell leaned forward. We'd had a good relationship once. He'd trusted me, built offensive schemes around my strengths, defended me to the media. But trust in professional sports has an expiration date, and mine was apparently up. "Here's where we are," he said. "Devin has earned a bigger role. His development has exceeded our expectations, and we believe he's ready to take on more responsibility." "My role," I said quietly. "A different role," Martin corrected. "We're not cutting you. We're not trading you. We want you here. But the reality is that the team needs to evolve, and that means adjusting rotations." "Adjusting? You mean benching me?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Richard jumped in, always the negotiator. What exactly are we talking about? Minutes? Roll? What does this look like? We're thinking 20 to 25 minutes per game, Coach said. Coming off the bench, providing veteran leadership, closing games when matchups favor your skill set. You'd still be integral to what we're trying to do. 20 to 25 minutes. I was averaging 34 minutes per game just last season. This wasn't an adjustment. This was a demotion. And if I say no? I asked. Martin and Coach exchanged glances. Then we'd have to explore other options, Martin said carefully. But I think you'd be making a mistake. You're still on a good contract. You'd still be on a competitive team. And frankly, the market for 32-year-old veterans with injury concerns isn't what it used to be. There it was. The unspoken threat. Accept this, or risk being traded to a rebuilding team, or worse, bought out and forced to chase minimum contracts. I need time to think, I said. Of course, Martin replied, but his tone suggested I didn't have much time. We're not asking for an answer today, but we do need to address this before the Portland game on Friday. The media is going to keep pushing, and we need a united front. A united front? As if we were allies rather than what we really were. Employer and employee with all the power on one side. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes. Richard negotiating minor details. Coach trying to soften the blow with talk of veteran wisdom and mentorship opportunities. But I barely heard any of it. I was too busy watching my career, my identity, my entire sense of self crumble in real time. When it finally ended, Richard and I walked back to the parking lot in silence. He could tell I didn't want to talk, didn't want strategy or spin or positive reframing. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. We'll figure this out. I nodded, got in my car, and drove. I didn't go home. Couldn't face that empty apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows and its view of a city that was moving on without me. Instead, I drove until I found myself at my mom's house, a modest 2-story in the suburbs, the same house I'd bought her with my first big contract. She opened the door before I could knock, like she'd been waiting, like she'd known I'd end up here. "Come here, baby," she said, and pulled me into a hug that finally broke through the wall I'd been building all day. I stood there in her doorway, 32 years old and 6'5", crying like I was 12 again, like I was that kid who'd just gotten cut from his first travel team and thought his world was ending. "I don't know what to do, Ma," I whispered. She held me tighter. "I know, baby," she said. "I know, but we're gonna figure it out, together." She led me inside to the kitchen table where I'd eaten 1,000 meals, where I'd done homework and signed my first sneaker contract and told her I was going pro. The table where life's biggest moments had always been processed. She made tea, her solution to every crisis, and sat across from me, waiting. "They want to bench me," I said finally. "I know. Everyone thinks I'm done. And what do you think?" I looked at her. This woman who'd raised me alone, who'd worked 2 jobs so I could go to basketball camps, who'd never missed a game from middle school through the pros. She'd sacrificed everything for my dream, and now I was watching that dream die. "I think they might be right," I admitted. "My body's breaking down. I can't keep up anymore. And there's this kid. He's everything I used to be except better. So what are you going to do about it?" "What can I do? The game doesn't want me anymore." She reached across the table and grabbed my hand, hard enough to hurt. "Listen to me. You are not your statistics. You are not your minutes per game. You are not what some teammate says at dinner or what the internet thinks. You're my son, and you're a man who has worked harder than anyone I've ever known. So if the game is changing, then you change with it, or you walk away with your head up. But what you don't do is sit here feeling sorry for yourself." Her words hit harder than anything Marcus had said, harder than the meeting with Coach and Martin, because they came from love rather than cruelty. "I don't know who I am without basketball," I said. "Then maybe it's time to find out." We sat there in that kitchen for hours, talking about everything and nothing. She told me stories about my father, how he'd also struggled with identity when his playing days ended, how he'd eventually found peace in coaching high school kids. She reminded me of the kid I used to be, before the fame and the pressure, when basketball was just something I did because it made me happy. By the time I left, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I felt lighter somehow, not because my problems had disappeared, but because I'd remembered something I'd forgotten. I didn't have to face them alone. On the drive home, I finally responded to Jasmine's text. "I'd like that. Coffee sometime?" She responded immediately. "How about tomorrow? Same place we used to go?" "Same place," I typed back. When I walked into my apartment, it didn't feel quite so empty. I stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the city, at all those lights and all those lives, and for the first time since that dinner, I felt something other than despair. I felt possibility. Whatever happened next, whether I accepted the bench role, got traded, retired, or somehow found a way to prove everyone wrong, I was going to face it on my own terms. Not as a victim, not as someone clinging to past glory, but as a man willing to fight for whatever came next. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Devin. "Practice tomorrow. Want to run some drills after? Could use your help with my post-game." I stared at the message for a long time, and then I smiled. "Yeah," I typed back. "Let's work. Because that's what you do. You keep moving forward. You adapt. You find new ways to matter. And maybe, just maybe, you discover that the ending of one story is just the beginning of another." The practice facility was nearly empty when I arrived the next morning at 6. The team wasn't scheduled until 9, but I'd always been the guy who showed up early, who put in extra work when nobody was watching. Old habits die hard, even when you're not sure why you're keeping them alive. The gym lights hummed to life as I flipped the switches, illuminating the court in harsh fluorescent white. There's something sacred about an empty arena. No crowd noise, no pressure, just the sound of your own breathing and the ball bouncing off hardwood. This was where truth lived. You couldn't fake it here. Couldn't hide behind teammates or game plans or excuses. I started with my routine, ball handling drills first, even though my handles had never been my strength. Then shooting, catch and shoot from the corners, off screens, pull-ups from mid-range. My knee protested with each plant and pivot. That familiar grinding sensation that had become the soundtrack to my decline. 200 shots. That was the number I'd committed to every morning since I was 16. Some days, I made 60%. Some days, like today, I was barely hitting 45. My legs were heavy, my timing off, my muscle memory fighting against the reality of what my body could no longer do. I was on shot 143 when I heard the door open. Devin walked in, carrying his gym bag and wearing headphones. He stopped when he saw me, pulled the buds from his ears, and for a moment we just looked at each other across the empty court. "You're here early," he said finally. "So are you." He set his bag down on the baseline. Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about that post move you used against Memphis last year. The one where you spun baseline and finished with the left. The night I scored 38? Yeah, that one. He grabbed a ball from the rack. "You said you'd show me." Part of me wanted to tell him to figure it out himself, that I didn't owe him anything, that he was taking my spot and I should let him fail on his own. But that's not who I was. For better or worse, I'd always been a teacher, even when it meant teaching someone how to replace me. "All right," I said. "Come here." We spent the next hour in the post. I showed him footwork, weight distribution, how to feel the defender's pressure and use it against them. How to sell the spin with your eyes before your body commits. The subtle details that separate a good move from a great one. Devin was a quick study. He had the physical tools I'd never possessed. Longer arms, quicker feet, a vertical that made my best jumps look earthbound. But he was raw, unrefined, all talent and no polish. He played like someone who'd never had to struggle, who'd been the best player on every team since middle school. "You're rushing it," I told him after his 5th attempt. "The move works because you make the defender commit first. You're trying to be fast when you should be trying to be patient. But in game speed, patience is speed. Trust me." He tried again, this time slower, more deliberate. He felt the defense, pivoted at the right moment, and finished clean. "There it is," I said. He grinned, and for a second I saw myself at 23, hungry, confident, certain the game would never get harder than it was right then. I wanted to warn him, tell him to savor this moment, because one day he'd wake up and his body wouldn't cooperate, his timing would be off, and some new kid would be learning his moves. But I didn't. Some lessons you have to learn yourself. "Your turn," he said, tossing me the ball. "Let's see if you've still got it." The challenge in his voice was playful but real. This was how young players tested veterans. pushing boundaries, measuring themselves against the past to understand their own present. I caught the ball, took position on the block. My knee immediately complained, but I ignored it. Muscle memory took over. The same move I'd just taught him, except with 10 years of refinement. I felt Devin's defensive pressure, sold the baseline drive with my eyes, spun middle, and finished with a soft hook shot that barely disturbed the net. "Damn," Devin said quietly. "You make it look easy." 20,000 reps, I said. "It's not talent. It's work." We kept going, trading positions, him learning and me remembering what it felt like when basketball was simple, when it was just two guys, a ball, and a shared love of the game. Around 7:30, the training staff started filtering in. Then some of the other early arrivals, Tony, Big Mike, a few of the younger guys, they saw Devin and me working together and the energy shifted. Like they'd expected tension, conflict, maybe even a fight, but found something else instead. Marcus showed up at 8:15, looking rough. He saw me, hesitated, then walked over. "Yo," he said. "Can we talk?" I looked at Devin, who took the hint and headed toward the water fountain. "I'm listening," I told Marcus. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. I'd known him long enough to read the signs. He was embarrassed, but too proud to just apologize. "The other night," he started, "I was drunk and stupid. Shouldn't have said that stuff in front of everybody." "But you weren't wrong," I said. He looked surprised. "What?" "You weren't wrong. Devin is special. My numbers are down. I'm not the same player I was." I paused. "But that doesn't mean you had to humiliate me in front of the team." I know, man, and I'm sorry. For real." He ran his hand over his face. "You ever feel like everything's moving too fast? Like we just got here, and now suddenly we're the old guys? Every day?" "Yeah." He looked out at the court, where Devin was now shooting threes with effortless range. "I think I was mad at you because seeing you struggle means it's going to happen to me too, and I'm not ready for that." It was the most honest thing Marcus had said to me in years, maybe ever. "None of us are," I said, "but we don't get to choose when it happens. We only get to choose how we handle it." He nodded slowly. "So what are you going to do? About the bench thing?" "Still figuring it out. For what it's worth, I think you can still play. Just maybe not the way you used to." He paused. "And I think this team needs you, even if your role is different." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was real, and that mattered more than perfection. "Thanks, man," I said. "We good?" "We're good." Marcus headed to the locker room, and I went back to shooting. But the conversation stayed with me. Maybe acceptance wasn't giving up. Maybe it was just seeing things clearly and deciding to keep fighting anyway. Practice started at 9. Coach Mitchell ran us through defensive sets, transition drills, and full-court scrimmages. I noticed the changes immediately. Devin running the first unit at my position, me getting reps with the second string. Coach didn't make a big announcement about it. Didn't need to. Actions spoke louder than words. During the scrimmage, I guarded Devin. Watched him use the post move I'd just taught him. Saw him execute it perfectly, scoring over me like it was nothing. The team erupted. Guys clapping, hyping him up, celebrating the future while the past struggled to keep up. It should have hurt. Should have felt like betrayal or insult or one more reminder that I was being replaced. But standing there, watching Devin celebrate, I felt something unexpected. Pride. I'd taught him that move. My knowledge, my experience, had made him better. Maybe that mattered just as much as scoring 38 points. Maybe being great wasn't just about what you did, but what you helped others do. After practice, I was heading to the training room when Coach Mitchell called me into his office. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the same chair I'd occupied 2 days ago during the meeting with Martin Green. I sat, bracing for round 2 of the conversation about my future. But Coach surprised me. "That was good, what you did with Devin this morning," he said. "Working with him one-on-one, showing him the details. That's the kind of leadership this team needs. He's got talent. Just trying to help him use it. I know what I said the other day, about the bench role, about the changes we need to make, and I stand by that. For the team's sake, we need to give Devin more opportunities." He leaned back in his chair. "But I want you to know that wasn't easy for me. You've been my guy for 8 years. You've never complained, never caused drama, never been anything but professional. You deserved better than how this went down." "It's the business," I said. echoing what everyone always said when things got hard. Yeah, but that doesn't make it right. He looked at me carefully. How are you doing? Really? Nobody had asked me that. Not Richard, not Martin Green, not even my mom. They'd all been so focused on what I was going to do that nobody had bothered to ask how I was handling it. Honestly, I don't know. Some moments I'm okay. Some moments I feel like my whole identity is falling apart. I paused. But I'm still here, still working. That's got to count for something. It counts for everything. Coach leaned forward. Listen, I can't promise you minutes. Can't promise you'll be in the closing lineup every game. But I can promise you this. If you buy in, if you embrace this new role and help Devin and the younger guys develop, you'll still be valuable. Maybe more valuable than you were as a scorer. Different valuable. Yeah, different. He stood up, extended his hand. I need your answer by tomorrow. Are you in, or do you want us to explore other options? I shook his hand, feeling the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. I'll let you know, I said. I spent the afternoon at a coffee shop on 7th Street, the same place Jasmine had suggested when I'd texted her. I got there early, ordered an Americano I barely touched, and sat by the window watching people pass by. Normal people. People with normal jobs and normal lives who didn't have to worry about whether their knees would hold up or whether they'd be relevant in 6 months. There was something appealing about that, about the simplicity of a life not lived in public. Jasmine arrived exactly on time. She'd always been punctual. She looked good, different. Her hair was shorter, cut into a bob that framed her face. She wore a blazer and jeans, the uniform of someone who'd moved on to bigger things. Hi, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Hi. For a moment, we just looked at each other, 8 months of silence stretching between us. You look tired, she said finally. I am tired. I saw what happened. At dinner. Yeah, everyone saw. She ordered a cappuccino from the passing barista, and then we sat in that awkward space between past intimacy and present distance. Why did you reach out? I asked. Because I know you, and I know that when things get hard, you isolate. You push people away and try to handle everything yourself. She stirred sugar into her coffee. I didn't want you to be alone with this. We're not together anymore, Jazz. You don't have to worry about me. I know I don't have to, but I want to. She looked at me with those dark eyes that had once felt like home. You were my partner for 3 years. That doesn't just disappear because we're not sleeping together anymore. I hurt you. You did. You chose basketball over us, over the life I wanted to build, and I resented you for that. She paused, but I also understood it, because I knew how much the game meant to you, how much it defined you. Defined. Past tense? That's what I'm asking. What defines you now? It was the same question my mom had asked, the same question I'd been avoiding since Marcus said those words at dinner. I don't know, I admitted. For as long as I can remember, I've been a basketball player. Everything I am, everything I do, everything I value, it all comes back to the game, and now the game is telling me I'm not enough anymore. So who am I? Jasmine reached across the table and took my hand. You're a man who works harder than anyone I've ever met. Who cares about doing things right? Who helped his mom buy a house and sends money to his old high school's basketball program and stays after practice to help rookies with their footwork? She squeezed my hand. You're more than your stats. You always have been. You just couldn't see it because you were so focused on being great. What if being great was all I had? Then you'll find something else, something bigger than basketball. She let go of my hand, but you have to be willing to look for it. We talked for 2 more hours about her life. She'd started her own marketing firm, was dating someone casually, had moved to a new apartment downtown. About my life, the reality of the bench role, the meeting with Coach, the morning working with Devin, about regrets and possibilities and what comes next. When we finally said goodbye on the sidewalk outside the coffee shop, she hugged me tight. Whatever you decide, she whispered in my ear, make sure it's for you, not for the team, not for the fans, not for some idea of who you're supposed to be. For you. I watched her walk away, disappearing into the evening crowd, and felt something shift inside me. That night, I sat at my kitchen counter with my phone in my hand, staring at Coach Mitchell's number. The answer to his question felt enormous, like it would determine not just my immediate future, but everything that came after. I thought about Jerome at the rec center asking if I still loved the game, about my mom saying maybe it was time to find out who I was without basketball, about Jasmine telling me to make the decision for myself, about Devin executing the move I'd taught him, and the pride I'd felt watching him succeed. I thought about all of it, and then I made the call. "Coach," I said when he answered. "It's me. You got an answer for me?" "Yeah." I took a breath. "I'm in, but on one condition." "What's that?" "I want to coach. Not officially, not right now, but I want to work with the younger guys, be involved in film sessions, help with game planning. I want to learn the other side of this game while I'm still playing it." There was a pause on the other end. "You thinking about coaching after you retire?" "I'm thinking about what comes next. And if I'm going to come off the bench, if I'm going to accept a smaller role, I want it to mean something. I want to be building towards something." "I can work with that," Coach said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Welcome to the new chapter." "Thanks, Coach." I hung up and sat there in the silence of my apartment, feeling the weight lift. It wasn't a perfect solution. I'd still have to watch someone else live my dream. Still have to accept that my best days were behind me. Still have to figure out who I was when I wasn't the star. But for the first time since that dinner at Rossi's, I felt like I was moving forward instead of just falling back. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to the team group chat. "See you all tomorrow. Let's work." Then I sent one more message, this one to Devin. 6 a.m., same post moves, bring your work ethic. He responded immediately, "Bet, I'll be there." I looked around my apartment, at the trophies and photos and evidence of a career that was entering its final act. This place had always felt like a testament to what I'd accomplished. But maybe it was time to make it something else, a launching pad for what came next. I didn't have all the answers yet. Didn't know if I'd be any good as a mentor or if I'd find meaning in a reduced role. Didn't know if I'd retire in a year or 5 or if I'd end up coaching or doing something else entirely. But I knew one thing. I was done being a victim of circumstance. Done letting other people write my story. Done measuring my worth by minutes per game or points per season. Whatever came next, I was going to face it with my eyes open and my head up. The game had changed on me, but I could change too. And maybe, just maybe, that's what being great really meant. Not refusing to bend, but learning how to bend without breaking. I turned off the lights and went to bed, ready for tomorrow's early morning session, ready for the work that would define this new chapter, ready finally to find out who I could become when I stopped clinging to who I used to be. The announcement came 3 days later, during media availability before our game against Portland. Coach Mitchell called me into his office an hour before the press conference, just the two of us. He looked uncomfortable, which immediately put me on edge. "We're going to address the roster changes today," he said. "Publicly. Get ahead of the speculation." "Okay. Devin will start tonight. You'll come off the bench, probably around the 8-minute mark of the first quarter. We'll see how the flow goes from there." I nodded. We'd discussed this. I'd agreed to it. But hearing the words out loud, knowing that in a few hours the world would officially know I'd been demoted, it hit different. "How do you want to handle questions?" Coach asked. "The media's going to push hard. They'll want a story, some kind of drama. I'll keep it professional. That's what I'm counting on." He paused. "This could get ugly. You sure you're ready?" "Does it matter if I'm not?" He gave me a look that was almost sympathetic. "No, I guess it doesn't." The press conference was held in the media room, a sterile space with team logos plastered on every wall and rows of chairs filled with reporters who'd been salivating for this moment since Marcus ran his mouth at dinner. They had their story now. Veteran pushed aside for young star. Tale as old as basketball itself. Coach sat at the center table with Devin on his right and me on his left. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The future and the past, with Coach in the middle deciding which way to turn. The questions started immediately. "Coach Mitchell, can you confirm the starting lineup change?" "Yes. Effective tonight, Devin Marshall will start at the 3 position. It's a decision we've been considering for a while, based on Devin's development and what we believe gives us the best chance to win." "And where does that leave the veteran starter?" Coach glanced at me. This was my cue. "I'll be coming off the bench," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Supporting the team in whatever way Coach needs me to." "How do you feel about that?" Another reporter, this one from ESPN, someone I'd known for years. "This is a significant change for you." I looked directly at the camera, knowing my mom would be watching, knowing Jasmine might be watching, knowing everyone who'd ever doubted me or supported me or written me off would see this moment. "Basketball is a team sport," I said. "My job is to help this team win, whether that's starting or coming off the bench. I'm not worried about my role. I'm worried about our record. But doesn't this feel like..." "Like what?" I interrupted, sharper than I intended. "Like the natural progression of a career? Like a coach making a decision he believes is best for the team?" "That's exactly what it is." The reporters scribbled notes, sensing blood in the water, but not getting the dramatic quotes they wanted. Devin was asked the obligatory questions about pressure and living up to expectations. He handled them well, staying humble, saying all the right things about learning from veterans and earning his opportunity, but I could see the excitement in his eyes. This was his moment, his time. After the press conference, we had our usual pre-game routine. I taped my ankle, stretched my knee, went through my shooting ritual. Everything the same as always, except nothing was the same at all. In the locker room, the energy was different. Guys were watching me, trying to gauge my reaction, my mood. Would I be bitter? Would I poison the locker room with resentment? It was a test, I realized, not just of my skills on the court, but of my character off it. I made a choice. "Yo, Dev," I called across the locker room. "Come here for a second." He walked over, cautious, like he wasn't sure if I was about to congratulate him or confront him. I stood up, put my hand on his shoulder. "Go kill it tonight," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is your moment. Take it." The relief on his face was visible, and around the locker room I felt the tension ease. It was the right thing to say, the veteran thing to say, but it was also genuine, because despite everything, the pain, the ego, the fear of irrelevance, I meant it. The game started without me on the court for the first time in 8 years. I sat on the bench in my warm-up jacket, watching Devin sprint up and down the floor, playing with the energy and fearlessness of youth. He scored on the first possession, a drive and dish from Marcus, an easy layup that had the home crowd roaring. Then he hit a three. Then he grabbed a steal and finished in transition. The team looked good, fast, dynamic. Everything we'd been trying to be all season but couldn't quite achieve with my aging legs slowing down the pace. Coach called my number at the 7-minute mark. I checked in, took Devin's place, and immediately felt the difference. The game was moving faster than I remembered. Rotations came quicker. The ball moved with more pace. I struggled to find my rhythm, to adjust to the speed. Portland attacked me on defense, recognizing the weak link. Their young guard blew past me twice in 3 possessions. I tried to compensate with positioning and experience, but speed doesn't care about IQ. On offense, I was tentative. The ball didn't come to me as naturally. I wasn't the first option anymore, wasn't even the second. I was the safety valve, the veteran presence, the guy you passed to when the play broke down. I finished the first half with 4 points on 2 of 6 shooting, 2 assists, and a -8 rating. Devin had 15 points, 3 assists, and was a +12. The contrast was stark, undeniable, painful. At halftime,